Hi, Shalom, Shalom from Israel. This is Ola, the daughter of Jethro. And I just heard that you black people that was stolen from Africa to America, that you don't know who you are. But you are the children of Yahweh, the children of Israel. And I'm telling you, you have to come back to your homeland, here to Zion, to Jerusalem, because us the Gentiles, we do need you. We need you to come and pray because you are our saviors. You the one that was chosen by Yahweh to live in this land, not the Jewish people, it's you. You were stolen from Africa, they deceived you, they told you that you are slaves, but you actually the children of Israel. And it's time just to come back. Come for your people, come back for us, come back for the whole Gentiles, because only you gonna save us. So please come back to Zion.
Segregation, whites and blacks, minorities, from black Jews to light Jews to dark Jews.
Black Jews, black Jews, black Jews.
Yes.
So it's not just blacks, it's anti-Semitism. The expression.
Tonight, I want to thank
What I'm about to tell you is that the Israelites, so-called Jews that are living in Israel today, are not the real Israelites. The real Israelites are the black and brown people of the world. What happened was when the black people that were the true Israelites and the brown people that were the true Hebrew Israelites fell from God's word as it is written, were cursed. So what happened was Rome came and sacked that land and they all fled. They went in all around the place, all around up north, south, east, west, but mostly down into Africa. They lived there for a little while in the wilderness until they were taken by slave ships to the Americas. The people that are in Israel today are converts. They come from Khazaria, which is southern Russia. They were visited by Hebrew Israelites at one time and learned from them. That's how they know all the customs. They can speak Hebrew and all that. They learned that. But they converted to Judaism. They are not the true Hebrew Israelites.
Hello out there to everyone viewing this video. My name is Brother Dana Stevens, and I'm coming to you and going to say some of the same words that I used in a video I created a little over a year ago, that by the time this video is over with, many of my white family and church family once again will reject me and dislike me. But I need to put this out there and put this out there right now. The white Jews that you and I have honored and been taught all these years are God's chosen people is an absolute lie. They are imposters. They are fake. They are descendants of the Romans that rose up into power in between the New Testament and the Old Testament that we as Christians believe was the Dark Ages, but God was speaking. But as they rose to power, they did exactly what Deuteronomy chapter 28 said would be done out of the very mouth of our God, when he said that my people will be taken from a land and stripped of their name, their identity, their culture, and everything about them, and brought to a land where they will be enslaved, and where they will be beat, and where they will fear the terror of their master day and night. And one of those verses in Deuteronomy chapter 28 says that even that nation will hover over them like that of an eagle. And so with that basis of that understanding, I am telling to you, my white brothers and sisters, that we have been duped all these years. We have been duped to believe that our black family members are low-life monsters created to be slaves and nothing more than that. But the truth is the absolute opposite. They are the chosen of God. They are the chosen of Yah. And God, even the God that we say we call upon in Christianity, is coming back to redeem his people. And it makes it very clear that the nation that held his people in slavery are going to fall, much like Pharaoh fell when he refused to let God's chosen people go. And I know you're going to doubt me and say, prove it. But my question is this: how much proof do you and I have on the things that you and I believe that we've been taught? I've never done research. So read The International Jew, which was written by Henry Ford, who built so-called, you're in my car. That back in the 1920s and 30s, he spent millions of dollars, 2 or 3, to do research and found out that the Jews that we serve today are fake Jews, and the relationship between our government and those Jews is based off of wealth, not that they're God's chosen people. That is the facade for us to tie with the enemy, while the real chosen people that we have enslaved are stripped of their identity in who they are. And so, white America, I want you to know that that which took place in Egypt under the reign of Pharaoh when he refused to let his people go is exactly what's going to happen to America when we in the white church refuse to acknowledge and let Yah's people go. And it doesn't matter if you believe this right now and right here, but time is coming, just like it did for the Egyptians who laughed. And so we have a lot of forgiveness to do in the white church. And this is why I know we do, because there's no way we love and honor our black brothers and sisters in this country outside of the knowledge that they are God's chosen people as equal as we do the Jews. And I even was kicked out of a church, and I was literally kicked out of a church of a black pastor because he said that I'm preaching a black Jesus and that I am bringing in separation and that I should not focus. Even as us as whites now are going to say we shouldn't focus. It doesn't matter. Under Jesus, we're all one. But then my question is this: why have you given so much honor and so much devotion and purpose in this country to defend and to protect the Jews? Our attitude is not the same. You actually hated on President Obama because you thought that he was not going to love on God's chosen people, the Jews that are living in Israel. And as a nation, if we want to be blessed, we must be a blessing and a protection of God's chosen people. And all of my white evangelical teachers and pastors and preachers teach that. So now why does that change? Because we found out that we are protecting the wrong people, and actually the people that we need to be protecting and acknowledging are the very people we have enslaved. Skin color. It's skin color. Even in my black church, it's skin color, that you've been taught by my white people that to believe that Jesus or Yeshua, yeah, my white people are going to say, come on, he was not black. Well, he sure was not blonde hair, blue-eyed the way that we portray him. He was far from that. So now why are we picking out details when we have lived with a complete opposite of a detail in the way that we portray Jesus Christ? Well, Henry Ford was the one that revealed that the Jews were actually fake. And the government told him that he would not be allowed to publish that book. And if he did, they would destroy his business. And then you get Hitler, that we have been taught is a bad man because of what he did to the Jews. Well, yes, that is true. But guess what? Hitler himself knew that the Jews were fake and that the blacks, the Africans that we enslaved in this country were actually the real chosen people of God. So America has distanced ourselves from learning anything about Hitler except for he was a bad man. But there is some truth in that bad man that we as a bad country, white country, are failing to acknowledge.
To Israel.
This is a historical depiction of the Jews during the Babylonian period, clearly showing the African racial origins that many believe originated out of Egypt and was followers of the Akhenaten religion. This is a statue of the boy king, King Tut. This statue was found in his tomb among many of the treasures in Egypt during an archaeological excavation in 1922. Scholars say King Tut was on the throne of Egypt a few years before the Israelites' Eurocentric Christian world knows nothing about the real Jesus from the tribe of Judah, the Ethiopian who spoke Aramaic. According to Hebrews 7:14, the tribe of Judah, from whom whence Jesus, or Yeshua, his Hebrew name, came, is a dark-skinned nation of people. However, as Europe prospered, it presented the global world with a white Jesus around the time when the Bible was being translated from Hebrew to Greek to Latin to English.
If we go back and you see, everything that we say today is scripture-based. Everything is in scripture. It's said that many of us have not gone into the research to really get the stuff. But it is recorded in Scripture. And it says, if we go back to the book of Genesis, let me see if I could, in the book of Genesis chapter 10, okay, verse 21, it speaks about the genealogy, okay? There was, Noah had 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Now, they said Japheth, but it's Japheth, okay? Shem had children, and out of his children, one of his sons was named Eber. And the word Eber means Hebrew. Okay? Now if, and we're talking about the 10th chapter. Now here in the first verse of the 11th chapter, it says, now the whole earth had one language and one speech. So what was it? Who were they? Hebrews. They were speaking Hebrew, the Hebrew language, because the offspring of Shem was a Hebrew. And if the earth was one language, one speech, then hallelujah, it has those to be folks Hebrew. That are living in Israel right now, they are not Hebrew Israelites. They are Israelis. They live in the land of Israel. But how did they get there? In the book of Revelation, we are told that in one of the letters that Yahweh dictated to John on the Isle of Patmos, to one of the churches, he says, I know you dwell in the synagogue of Satan, and there are those who say they are Jews, but they are not. The Jewish nation was never in existence till 1940. That's when the Jewish nation became a nation. It's all documented in the Encyclopedia Britannica. I read it there myself several times. It's there in the book. Okay? But here is the thing. When Yahweh took up our forefathers out of the land and scattered us all over the world, that land was rich and fertile. Everything remained there intact. The Hebrew scriptures, the scrolls, the sacred scrolls, and everything was there intact. At the time, it was not the United Nations, it was the League of Nations. They gathered up people from all over Germany, Russia, Europe, and brought them into the land. And they settled in the land, rich and fertile. And what happened is, when they got there, all the sacred scrolls, everything was intact. And so they set out to master the language of the Hebrews. And they learned it well, so well, that when they begin to unfold scriptures from the scrolls to put it in book form, when they came to Yahweh's name, they said, the Jews said, the Jewish scholars said, the name Yahweh was too holy for sinful man to utter. So they removed it and replaced it with Lord, God, Adonai. And the nations that we have been scattered into are fierce. Not only are they fierce, but they have taken everything away from us. They have stripped us of our identity. We no longer know who we are. We no longer know where we belong. Now we have other nations that come into this country. And each one of them could trace their identity. And each one could go back to where their roots are. Where do we come in? Where's our roots? Our identity was stripped away from us.
Deuteronomy 28:65. And among these nations shalt thou find no ease, neither shall the sole of thy foot have rest. But the Lord shall give thee there a trembling heart, and failing of eyes, and sorrow of mind. And thy life shall hang in doubt before thee. And thou shalt fear day and night, and shall have none assurance of thy life. Ephesians 6:12. For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. Isaiah 5:13. Therefore my people are gone into captivity. Remember, we are Yah's children. We are his people. Luke 21:24. And they shall fall by the edge of the sword, and shall be led away captive into all nations. Slavery, bondage, and captivity played a huge part in the children of Israel's history, as they would be held as captives and shackled by the chains of slavery on many occasions. The Bible speaks of Israel's captivity and bondage in Egypt, Babylon, and Assyria. But to be able to identify the modern descendants of Israel would mean having to trace the people who were taken captive and brought by ships into bondage. Behold, the days come, saith Yah, that I will send a famine in the land, not a famine of bread, nor a thirst for water, but of hearing the words of Yah. And they shall wander from sea to sea, and from north even to the east, and they shall run to and fro to seek the word of Yah, and shall not find it. In that day shall the fair virgins and young men faint for thirst.
The word Egypt, as we know it today, is the name of that continent. But it was never named Egypt in the Old Testament scripture. Originally, that name of that continent or that country was Mithraim. Egypt, if you look in a very good dictionary, you will see the word Egypt means a condition of slavery. And because slavery was the key element in that country, when they formed the New World and they gave the New World names to these countries, they named it Egypt, associating it with the condition. So, keep that in mind, that Egypt is a condition of slavery. Remember, the children of Israel was in slavery in Egypt, okay? The Mithraim. The 68th verse, the last verse in that chapter says, this is because we disobey. And Yahweh will bring you back to Egypt, which means condition of slavery, by ships. On a journey I said you should never make again. You remember when Moses stood at the Red Sea and he stretched his rod and he said to the children of Israel, the Egyptians you see today, you will see them no more forever. That's a covenant that Yahweh made, that he shall not turn back. But because they disobeyed, he's going to bring them back. He brought us back. Ladies and gentlemen, there you will offer yourselves for sale as male and female slaves to your enemies, but no one will buy you. It's all in Scripture. Our people, the true Hebrew Israelites, are black people, because the Scripture says we will be brought into slavery by ships. And all over the world, there is no one, no people, no nation on the face of this earth was ever taken into slavery by ships but Hebrew Israelites, African people.
Deuteronomy 28:68, and Yah shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships, by the way whereof I spake unto thee. Thou shalt see it no more again. And there ye shall be sold unto your enemies for bondmen and bondwomen, and no man shall buy you. According to verse 68, Israel will go into a repressive, brutal bondage similar to what was experienced when held captive in Egypt. Only this time ships will be the major transportation method used to move the Israelites to their new dwelling places.
So here we have a bunch of college textbooks, like I usually like to show right before I break down these films, to prove to you I'm not just talking. All right, I'm not crazy. I got the proof to back these things up. Okay, they know who we are. But I want to go here in the Bible dictionary, okay, just to prove these things. And Here's another one, the Zondervan Pictorial Bible Dictionary. Now, they claim to say that we're African, right? We're Hamites. But if we go here and look at the definition of Ham, okay, let's get that real quick. The youngest son of Noah, born probably about 96 years before the flood, and one of the 8 persons to live through the flood, he became the progenitor, meaning forefather, of the dark-skinned races, not the Negroes. So the Negroes are not from Ham. The scholars understand that. They are not what you call African or those quote-unquote African tribes, but the Egyptians, Ethiopians, Libyans, and Canaanites. So they understand that these Negroes, or those whom you call Negro or African American, they're not Hamites, okay? They are from Shem. They are the original Hebrews, okay? Now, if we look up this word, ruddy, right? A word used to refer to a red or fair complexion in contrast to the dark skin of the Hebrews. Dark skin of the Hebrews. The Hebrew Israelites, they were dark-skinned people. Now, when we're dealing with King David, right? Let's go to 1 Samuel chapter 17. We want verse 42. And the Philistines came and drew, matter of fact, jump down here. And when the Philistines looked about and saw David, he disdained him, for he was but a youth and ruddy. Ruddy. We look up the word ruddy, okay? Dark skin of the Hebrews, okay? Which this kills that dummy doctrine that Esau is the white man. Also, it proves that the Hebrews were dark-skinned people. But I'm going to further prove this, okay? So, in this first book, Ebos or Ibos, Hebrew exiles from Israel, okay, amazing facts and revelations. All right, we go here, and we see this image here, okay? Fine Hebos, okay, when we were being sold into slavery, okay, by lovely Europeans, okay, wonderful Europeans. Now we go here to page 54. All right, the first British explorers who met the Ibos or Ebos of Nigeria were quick to identify them as a branch of Hebrews. Okay, Dr. Bates in 1938, and so simply referred to them as Hebrews, Ebos, Hebos, and later Ibos. So also refer to themselves as Hebo, a corruption of Hebrew. So when they were calling us Hebos, it was a corruption. Basically, they didn't even care to call you your proper name, but to call you basically Hebrew, or to even identify you as Hebrew, okay? Or accepted to be called Hebo, Ebo, or Ibo as a way of associating themselves with the emergent new culture of the colonial masters. Now, this book has tons of information, but I'm just going through this thing briefly because I'm going to expose this 12-tribe chart to prove all these things. Okay, here's another scholarship, all right, scholastic source, college textbook. Okay, Creole New Orleans, Race and Americanization. Those who watch my videos know that I use this book a lot to bring out this information for the new viewers coming into this truth. Okay, as we see here, between June 1719 and January 1731, 16 slave trading ships arrived in Louisiana from the Senegal region. 6 ships came from Judah. Judah means Jew, okay, or Wida, a slave trading post. A slave trading post. All right, now I'm going to hold that for a second and get another college textbook right here, A Cultural History of the Atlantic World. Okay, 1250 to 1820. Okay, John K. Thornton. You see that? I'm just going to go here real quick. I'm gonna do a separate video using all these sources to bring it out in depth, because there's tons of information in here. But just to confirm, all these sources are connected, okay? Europeans often fortified their factories as trading posts, like I just read to you in the other source. For example, the French director at Whydah on the coast of modern-day Benin. Okay, that Whydah means Judah. Judah, as I showed you here on page 67. So we doing book precepts to confirm these things, okay? Judah, okay? And they have a map of this called Negro Land. You can look that up by Emmanuel Bowen, okay? A slave trading post. Between February 1726 and January 1731, 12 slave ships from Senegal landed 3,259 slaves that believes at the mouth of the Mississippi River. During that same period, one ship from Judah landed 464 slaves at that same port. The African slaves brought to the Chelsea Peak during the 18th century came mainly from the Bight of Biafra and were heavily Igbo, okay, which connects back to this book, Igbos, Hebrew exiles from Israel. So all these books, all these sources, scholastic sources, are complementing and confirming one another. Here's another one, Western African history. This is a college textbook, but I'm sure you haven't learned this in school at all, nor are you being taught this information. Okay, but I'm just showing this thing briefly. I'm not trying to get too deep right now, because when I do, that's going to be the time. But I'm just proving to you this information is true. Okay, page 199. The inhabitants of Bani, when our author last visited that port, amounted to about 3,000. They are chiefly a mixture of Igbo or Hebo and the Brass tribes. Again, this source has a lot of information, all complementing and backing up each other. Okay, here is another college source. Okay, Whydah, okay, means Judah, the social history of a West African slaving port that I just showed y'all already. And what do we have here? Dark-skinned people. And who are these right here? Europeans. They're not Edomites. Okay, we're going to go here just to confirm this Judah, this location, this slaving port. Okay, although Ida is the spelling of the town's name current nowadays, it occurs in European sources between the 17th and 19th centuries in various other forms. So this location, it has different names for it, basically. Okay, Whydah, as I showed y'all. Okay, Fida, Judah. Okay, Judah. Okay, this source has a lot of information as well. Okay, we confirming this thing. So now I want to get into the Bible real quick. Now, if we go into the Holy Scriptures, which was once called the history of the Negro race, we go here into the book of Lamentations, chapter 1, verse 3, dealing with Judah. Judah is gone into captivity, slavery, which I just showed y'all in all these sources that they know. Because of affliction, because of great servitude, she dwelleth among the heathen, the Gentiles, not the Edomites. She findeth no rest. All her persecutors overtook her between the straits when they came after us. Okay, here is, and it's all over in the scriptures about who we are. We just need to study. But here's another great source from Babylon and Timbuktu. Okay, just want to go here to confirm these things. Matter of fact, before I show y'all that, let me show y'all this one, Hebrewisms of West Africa, just a little piece since we were talking about Judah. Okay, the Lion of the tribe of Judah. Hebraic culture may have penetrated to West Africa. The Hebraic influences did penetrate to the very heart of Negro land. I'm going to go through this, bring out all this information when I bring out the info on the 12 tribe chart. Just want to show you this real quick. This image right here. Okay, the Ashanti ambassadors. All right, if you notice what they have on their neck right here. Okay, this emblem, all right, of the 12 tribes. Okay, you see that? So when these Europeans, not Edomites, came, they were still holding their customs, and they still had their emblem representing the 12 tribes. And you notice it says Ashanti. Okay, when you watch the movie Black Panther, they speak of the Ashanti because they know these people are the real Hebrew Israelites. Okay, now back to this book, Babylon, the Temple of 2. Run here real quick. Page 84. In the year 65 BC, Roman armies under General Pompey captured Jerusalem in 70 AD. General Vespasian and his son Titus put an end to the Jewish state with great slaughter. During the period of the military governors of Palestine, many outrages and atrocities were committed against the residue of the people. During the period from Pompey to Julius, it has been estimated that over 1 million Jews fled into Africa. You see, the Hebrews, they fled into Africa. They weren't Africans, but they fled into Africa, and they were dark-skinned people, so you wouldn't even recognize them from any other African tribe except by their customs. Fleeing from Roman persecution and slavery, the slave markets were full of black Jewish slaves. Okay, so there's tons of information proving these things.
The first icons were painted in the 6th century. That's 500 years after Jesus died. So how could the artists have known the color of his hair or the shape of his face?
Josias has found that the face in the icons corresponds to a type of skull not found in Israel. The face of Jesus would have been closer to these Jewish skulls. They were found in Jerusalem and they date to the 1st century.
And if you look at this, notice how this is very long and this is very, very narrow. It's a complete different type.
We used the 1st century skull to get even closer to the face of the Jesus of history.
This certainly doesn't look anything like the images that one associates with him, and I think it's much more likely to be an accurate reflection of the majority of people who would have been around at that time.
Look at these telling images from a Jewish synagogue in Syria. They were painted in the 3rd century, less than 200 years from the time of Jesus. They're the earliest pictures of Jewish people in the world, and fashions back then changed slowly.
The kind of hairstyle that you get, it's short, it's curly, it's, if you like, afro in style, and this seems to be almost uniform in the way that Jesus is depicted there. It's unlikely that Jesus' skin tones were white in the traditional, as you get it in much of the traditional art, as you get it in Hollywood Jesus's. It's more likely had darker skin tones, and is much more likely to have looked something like this.
But just to further prove that I am not playing around with this truth, I have other scholastic sources and illustrated books to confirm they know who we are. Okay? So this first source I want to look at real quick. I'm just going real quick through these things. Picture history of Jewish civilization. Now, one thing I just want to say, these books are very, very expensive, and it's hard to find. And when I show you these images, you are going to wonder why and understand why it's so expensive, because they know who you are and they don't want you to get your hands on these books, okay? Which confirms this information is true. Okay, just looking here where it was printed in Israel, okay, 1970, All right? Jewish civilization, as we see here, these are slaves in captivity. These are the Jews, the Hebrew Israelites. Okay, thousands of war captives who were transformed into slaves made it possible for the Egyptian kings to implement their feats of engineering. Chained captives are shown on these painting clay facing plaques. Right, and these don't look like Europeans. They look like dark-skinned people, Negroes, or what these ignorant Europeans call Negroes, okay? From a building erected by Ramses II in honor of the king's brave warriors from the period of the 19th dynasty, okay, in Paris. If we look over here, we see these Egyptians, dark skin with froze, ruling over the Hebrews, who were also dark skinned with froze. Okay, so that's just a piece right there. Here's another source, okay, the unknown catacombs, basically in Rome. I just want to show a few images in this book. I showed y'all this one in particular on YouTube. All right, let's just go here. Now, this is an image of the one they call Christ at the well. Okay, as you see, Negro, Negroid, and woolly hair. Not straight, long hair that they show you. Okay, let's go here. The sacrifice of Isaac. We got Abraham. Negro. We have Samson. Okay, slaying the lion. Negro. Okay, just showing you these quick images. We have Jonah being cast in the sea. Okay, these were Negroid people. All right, we left our images behind so it won't be whitewashed, but unfortunately it was whitewashed because people are scared of the truth. But here we have the 3 Hebrews in the fiery furnace. Wow. Dark-skinned people, woolly hair, even though you see they tried to make it seem like their hair was kind of straight. You see that? That's what you call tampering, okay? Then we have down here the one they call Christ with the 5 loaves, okay? Feeding the 5,000, all right? So it's another source confirming this film, why they making these type of movies. Okay, here's another source, imprinting the divine, Byzantine and Russian icons. Okay, you know that these people were dark-skinned people. I'm just showing you a little piece right here. They understand very well that these biblical people were dark-skinned people. All right. So once again, another book, The Icon. Like I said, these books are very expensive and hard to find, hard to get, because again, they don't want you to find this information, have this information, okay? They know the biblical people were black, for sure. It's a fact. Let's go here. Okay, these angels, 2 archangels, froze, dark skin. We'll learn that in the scriptures as well. We'll get the true understanding. Okay, let's go here. I'm just showing these things briefly. Look, they tried to paint over their dark skin. You see that? St. George. They tried to paint over his dark skin. The whitewashing. Here is the apostles, Peter and Paul. Okay. Dark-skinned men, they were not European-looking people that you have been brainwashed with all your life, okay? But a lot of these images is like they have to put a truth mixed in with lies. As you see here, right? The wise men bringing their gifts to the baby Christ who was black. Dark-skinned baby. Dark-skinned people. Let's go here. So these images, dark-skinned people, and let's see. So let's see what they say. Prophet Moses, we have David, and we have Christ. Okay, Christ to the right. Dark skin, not European. Okay. Above is Moses. Dark skin. Dark skin of the Hebrews. Ruddy. And above to the right is King David. Ruddy. Dark skin. Right. Not European. Okay, for my last source, this is the book called The Nazis by Time Life Books. Okay, we see Hitler over here with his SS men watching a movie. Okay, in one segment of a Nazi instructional film, right, the genetic heritage of the Jew is purportedly traced to Oriental Negro. Near Asian and Hamitic peoples, we know it's not Ham. We corrected that in the beginning. Hence, the film concludes the Jew is a bastard. They're not the real biblical people. Okay, let's go over here. He shows you that here, though. These people, he calls them a bastard. The real Jews are connected to these dark-skinned people, not these people. And this is why this is so much ruckus going on overseas, because they understand over there that the real people are not over there. And that's in the scriptures. Once you read the book of Joel, chapter 3, those first 2 verses. So, anyways, let's get into this now.
This song tells the story of the Lemba's journey all the way from Israel to South Africa. Having traced this journey, I'm eager to hear what Samuel Moeti thinks about the DNA evidence.
So the genetic testing actually proved to the doubters. Genetic testing actually proved to the doubters what you and your forefathers have been saying for generations. That must be exciting news. It is. I'll be honest, I hadn't heard of the Lemba. I knew very little about the people. But having spent time making the journey from Jerusalem down through Zimbabwe, having spent time here at this festival, seeing what your people are all about, I can only sum it up in one word, and it's shalom. Shalom.
We've seen how science has backed up the claims of the Lemba in the face of years of doubt and prejudice. The archaeological clues, the DNA evidence, and the Lemba's own oral history add up to a very convincing argument. It reminds me that first impressions can often be misleading. It was hard to believe that a tribe of black Africans could be the descendants of ancient Israelites. But that's exactly what they appear to be.
Brothers and sisters, they are there. We are not lost. We are scattered.
You're not even American. You're not even African 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 American. Besides, to them, you're not even American. You're not even African American. You're...
You are of the Igbo tribe, Bennett. You are of the Igbo tribe. You are of the Igbo tribe. You are of the Igbo tribe.
On to Jerusalem? On to Jerusalem.
On to Jerusalem!
So?
When Solomon was king of Israel? 21st dynasty?
So?
When Solomon was king of Israel?
Hear me, O Israel! From this time forward, and for all time, so are you free. Free? The lost tribes of Israel were black.
Just a symbol of Jesus.
Well, hello, symbol. And goodbye.
JJ painted him.
Don't finger me, Michael. I had him in the closet where he wasn't performing no miracles for nobody.
Mama, couldn't we at least let black Jesus hang alongside?
Forget it. The only Jesus I know is him, and the one thing he don't need is a partner. Sasha, both of you. This picture has been in my family for as long as I can remember. When I was a baby, I don't know what I saw first. My mama, my papa, or this Jesus. Now, he's the one I know and love, so let's close the subject. Jesus was black, the Bible would have said so.
But it does say so.
What are you talking about?
I read about it. It's in Revelations chapter 1, verse 14. It says, his hair is like wool, and his eyes are like flame of fire.
Well, Lord have mercy. It sure do say that, don't it?
And see, Mama, look at her hair, like wool, ain't it? And look at them eyes, red like fire.
Yeah, they sure
Mama, how do we know Jesus wasn't black? He could have been from the lost tribe of Israel. They were supposed to be black.
I bet they were. If ever people were lost, we're it. If ever people were lost, we're it.
Put my title up there. You see it, Tim? Now, when I get done with this, you're going to realize how Negro is a great word. It's not a bad word. It's not a bad word. It is who you are. They knew who you was, and they changed their name from Negro to black. First of all, they used nigger first, but it was a derivative of the Negro word. They knew who you were, and they figured out that if you keep saying Negro, they'll trace it. There's a way to trace who Negroes are. Negroes are a people. It's not just a byword or something white people may came up with or something that we just call ourselves. It is not a bad word. It is not a disrespectful word. I thought it was until I researched it and found out that it is not. Now, I wanted to get that first witness in you so that you get my premise or my foundation, so when I begin to go deeper and really give you definitive understanding, that you will not know without a shadow of a doubt who you are and why you are here and what our purpose in the earth really is. Now, it's very difficult to do this because the majority of our opposition are now preachers who have been trained in seminary by white scholars to learn the Bible a certain way. And the reason why we had to go to seminary was it was to educate us with white thinking about the Bible. The problem is that the Bible was not written by white people or for white people. The white boy just told y'all Paul and them was black. He was telling you everybody was black. The Bible is a book about a black people. You got what I'm now? I know, and you do your own research. It's not a racist thing. It's a truth thing. Now, when we accepted this Christ to be white, nobody has had a problem with that. Even though all the evidence, even in the Bible itself, scriptures was telling us, but we still accepted it because we love God, right? But now that we're starting, this is an end time revelation. The Bible, an angel told Daniel, shut up the book to the end. Close it up to the end. Knowledge is going to be revealed in the end. Well, this is the knowledge that God is revealing, because it's very important to know who's who. Are you understanding what I'm saying? And so now that we are trying to find out some things, we have all kinds of opposition in people, even our own people, because it's so difficult for slaves to know they was special. It was something about them. When all your life you've been told you was a slave, that might have been the most damaging of that might have done the most damage to my self-esteem that I ever had when at the realization when I went to school that my lineage went back to slavery. And I'm seeing these white boys identifying with Christopher Columbus and identifying with Franklin and all them, and I'm sitting there like, I don't know who I am and I have no idea what else to say, and all they told me was I was a slave, and that's the extent of my knowledge. That hurt my self-esteem. I saw the white boy when he found out who he was and who I was. He looked down on me at that point, and I felt low because I had no history to point to that I wasn't always in this condition. But that was the white supremacist or the colonial intent to keep you from knowing who you are, so you would never ever want to be more than what they told you are. So our little thug Negroes in the street are just slaves. The images have come from Jewish and European people who go into the hood the same way they went and got step and fetch it and sleep and eat and get the worst of us and put us on TV and say, this is y'all, and they pay our people to degrade ourselves and coon on TV, and they'll give millions of dollars to look bad and look degrading, and so they can put the image out there that this is who y'all are, because we trying to remove y'all so far away from who we know y'all are that y'all God will not even recognize y'all. You got what I'm saying? So this Negro land is something I'm going to show you today, how much history was lied about. Come on, Tim. Now, this is where we start from. This is the Jewish-Roman War. Now, I'm not going to go all the way back and explain to you about who we are. You've already heard enough teaching on that. You should know who we are. You do your own research. What I'm trying to show you, I'm trying to give you definitive understanding how we got here. Because that's really one of the major problems is, okay, well, if we are those people, how do we get from Africa to here? Well, that's what I want to show you, because that's where they're trying to knock us with and trying to come and say it can't be, because how did we get? Well, I'm going to prove to you without a doubt the route, everything, how we got from where we got. Are you hearing what I'm saying? Now, I've already proven this by DNA. I gave y'all the DNA test. You do your own test. I tell you, if you are Hebrew, your DNA is going to take you right back to Nigeria or Benin, right? And I'm going to show you why that's where it's going to show that you're from. All African Americans are going to, and in Caribbean, wherever you are, if you are black in this hemisphere, your DNA is going to take you back to Nigeria, because there was a certain place, I told y'all before, they did not take the slaves all over Africa, picking all over Africa. They took them from one place. It was a name, that place had a name, and they took them from one place. And that's why the Africans turned on us. I'm going to show you that too. You're not an African. I know you want to be an African, because that's all you know, because you think black, because you the only place you think is black is there. What you don't know, everywhere was black before. The whole Middle East was black. Did you know Chinese people are black? We was in China before they was there. We was here. We was here before India. We was here before the white men settled this. That's what the Olmecs are down there in South America. So we don't do enough history. It ain't that we don't do enough. It's been kept from us. Are you hearing what I'm saying? And you say, why is this important? Because to know the Messiah, you're going to have to know who he's coming for. See, the colonial powers had to erase who God was and then cause us to believe that nobody is in particularly special. But even Paul says in the book of Romans, God has not cast away his people, saying that God it's all Israel shall be saved. Now the problem is, I don't have time to go there, it's in Revelation 2, when the Bible says there's these false people who are calling themselves Jews but are not. But they are the synagogue of Satan. And we know they are the Zionists, the Rothschilds, them Jews over in Israel. They false. They not real Jews. They from Khazaria. I done said it over and over again. The point is they're living in, what happened was those are the people that have scrambled up all the history so nobody knows who they are, and they kept us from knowing who we are. Now they couldn't kill us because the Most High's hand was still on us. But what they did do was erase us. They erased you. That's why you don't know Negro land. If they didn't erase you, would know Negro land is a place. You don't know that because they erased it. Why? Because they didn't want you to know you was from somewhere. Why? Because if you trace where you from, you're going to trace from Africa, and you're going to see the trek back to Jerusalem, and then you're going to find out who you are, and it's going to point to who they are. And like Hitler said, they are bastards. They are imposters. And the reason why they got all that wealth and money and all that is because the world thinks they are those people. They think they God's chosen people. And y'all hearing what I'm saying? So can y'all handle my premise? Now, if you want a little bit more understanding, go and look at some messages. One of them called Who Are We? That's a message you can get into, and that'll give you all the foundation of this. Go to Joel chapter 3. Put me on the screen, Tim. What I got? Oh, yeah. Still go to Joel chapter 3. The Jewish-Roman War. Now, this is where the last time the true Hebrews were in Jerusalem, in 70 AD. This is the last time the real Hebrews, say real, Hebrews were in Jerusalem. Put it on me, Tim. Now, the Hebrews that are there now are converts. They come from Khazaria in the Caucasus Mountains, White Mountains, in the southern hemisphere of Russia. They had a king in 700, was it AD, 70 AD, called King Bulan. He decided that they had Christians coming against his kingdom on one side. He had Muslims coming on the other side. He didn't want to be Muslim because they was called the serpent people, very wicked people. So he knew he couldn't want to be Muslim because Muslims was too strict, and he didn't want to be Christians because Christians are real. So he said, we'll be Jews. He sent to Jerusalem to get rabbis, Babylonian Talmudic rabbis that came and taught them Judaism, and they converted the whole country to Judaism and called themselves Jews. These are white folks that called themselves Jews. They migrated from the Caucasus Mountains down into all of Europe, and then during the Second World War, the First World War, they had migrated all throughout Europe. Then in the Second World War, they had gotten into Germany and Poland and all that. That's when Hitler decided he's going to get rid of these people. And the whole goal was they was trying to find a homeland. Say a homeland. Well, by them calling themselves Jews, of course, they felt they had the right to Jerusalem. But they were not the real Jews. But the Palestinians was living in Jerusalem at the time, which they not the true people supposed to be there either. But they more Semitic than these white so-called Jews. You got what I'm saying? They came into Israel in 1948 with the help of the United Nations by Britain signing a Balfour Declaration to give Israel to the Palestinians. Just gave it to them. To give it to these white Jews without, how can you give somebody, that's the same thing they did in America. We're just going to take the Indian land. That's what they did to the Palestinians. So now you don't see that. All you see on the news is these Palestinians throwing rocks and launching bombs and doing suicide, but you don't know why they're doing it. Well, somebody moved in their land, decided they're going to take over their land with no true rights to that land. These are white people living in the hottest place in the world. They have no real heritage in the land, but the world goes along with it because they are your bankers. They own your bank. They own our Federal Reserve. They own the banks of London. The Zionist Rothschild. They own everything. So you got to go along with them. They own your media. So ain't nothing you can say about it because they are over all of that. So they allowed them to get away with that. Y'all got what I'm saying? Now I want to give y'all this premise, because you must understand that the falseness is what God is revealing in the last day. He's revealing who's who. And this got to be revealed in order for Christ to come. If this is not revealed, you're going to receive the wrong Christ. There's a Christ coming. He's going to be a Jewish Christ. He's coming. He's going to be a Jewish Christ. They got him coming. That's why they be rebuilding the temple in Jerusalem. Now the Bible says there shouldn't be no true Hebrews in Jerusalem, because the Bible says Jerusalem should be trodden down by the Gentiles to the time of the end. So it shouldn't be nobody in Jerusalem but Gentiles. So anybody over there is fake, right? Okay, so if we know they're fake, the question says, who is real? Well, let's find out the people, because it's got to match. I know the people ain't disappeared. If God says he got a remnant he's going to bring back into the land, then where are the people at? And it's very difficult for you to understand that, because we are so self-esteem, and we are just the lowest of the low, which Deuteronomy 28 said we would be that way. We would be a byword. A byword is that word nigger. That's what everybody, they got nigger in every language. They call you that. In every language they call it us that, because we are a byword of the nations. Why? Because you don't know who you are. Why? Because of the sins of your forefathers. Say before slavery. Okay, y'all got what I'm saying? You had Joel 3. Okay, now go back. Give me my picture. Now this is the fall of Jerusalem. When Rome went into Jerusalem for the last time, and just massacred. Really, they just massacred the Jews. They was trying to genocide the Hebrews at this point. And many of the Hebrews, of course, escaped. This war dispersed the children of Israel once and for all, and they fled into Africa. Say Africa. Now, come on, Tim. Now, the reason why they fled into Africa, because they looked like Africans. That's why the Cushites, or better yet, the Hamites, Noah had 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And we know that Shem is the Semitic line, which Christ comes from, and Ham is the darker races, or the Ethiopians and the Africans. Well, the Shemites look like the Hamites, and they intermingled many times. That's why when Joseph and them was in Egypt, they could mingle with the Egyptians because he looked like an Egyptian. Are you hearing what I'm saying? So this is one of the first biggest lies, is to tell you that the Bible was white. Well, the Bible wasn't white. The Bible was talking about black people. This is why our brothers in Islam and in Egyptology and then left the Bible, because they think it's about white people. That's what they said. The Bible is about black folk, and it can be proven. It's been proven over and over and over again. Let me give you some more proof. This is the Zondervan Bible Dictionary. I didn't say it. I didn't write it. Somebody knew it. Zondervan Bible Dictionary. The definition of Ham. Who is Ham? Ham is the 3rd son of Noah. Where the African races come from, right? Who they said we come from. Did they not tell us we came from Ham? That's what I heard. Well, Zondervan, for some reason, is saying Ham, perhaps, well, I can't see it over, but is the eldest son, the son of Noah, born probably about, I can't say it, before the flood, and one of the eight people who lived through the flood. He became the progenitor of the dark race, the father, say father, of the dark races, not the Negroes. All Africans descended from Ham. All Africans. Put it back up there. Ethiopians, Libyans, Egyptians, Canaanites. They all descended from Ham. Now, if you are African American, you got to be one of them. But somebody's telling you their daddy ain't your daddy. Why did they single out the Negro? And when you came to this country, that's what they was calling you. Somebody knew you wasn't African. I didn't say it. I'm trying to prove it. Somebody knew. We got people that ain't these people. We got people from Africa that ain't Africans. Let it sink in. Because I want to help you, because I know how we just so skeptical. I don't know nothing else to do but study it. What else can we do but find the research and study it? So are we not trying to study it? So we have proof saying you're not an African. Said the Nick, because Africans are now their sons of Ham was Cush, Mizraim, Put. Right? Sons of Ham, Cush, Mizraim, Put. Those are his 3 sons. So we know that's Egypt and Ethiopia and Ethiopia and Libya. There you go. Those were the 3 people groups that came from Ham, where the black races that scholars told us all these years, that's where black people came from. Every black person came from Ham. But now we're finding out, wait a minute, there's this anomaly people called Negroes that you overlooked that because you think Negroes is just a word they was calling us when we came here. But you don't know Negroes was defining you. That's why they changed the name from Negro to black. Why did they change? Then they changed it again to really screw you up and call you African American, because now you think you're from Africa. That's what we want you to think. We don't mind you think you're from Africa, because you ain't gonna never know where you from, and that's just like saying you a Scandinavian. You wouldn't matter. But if we leave the Negro title on you and y'all get a hold to these certain maps, you're gonna know where you from. Then you're gonna trace who you are. And then you're going to see who we are. Come on. Come on, Tim. Now, 1771 map. I'm going to show you a 1771 map of Africa. It was not called Africa. Africa came from a white Jew named Africanus. He's the one named Africa. And when he named it Africa, he went as far in Africa as Timbuktu. And that's as far as he went, called the whole continent Africa. same way they did America. The continent of Africa had a name. It ain't like we don't have no name. I'm going to name that. Name it, and I'm going to name it my name. But it had a name. The whole continent of Africa had a name already. These maps have been erased from history because this is how they hid who you are, who we are, and they cut our history off. Literally wiped it. I'm going to show you. They literally did it. Put me up there. Now, this is the lower part, the west part of Africa, the horn, around the horn. Now, right here, where, you know, Mali, Ghana, Nigeria is in the middle, if you can see, that's called Negro land. That ain't just no byword. Negro land's a place. And in Negro land are the 12 tribes today. They still there. All of them ain't there, but the origins are there. Now, what I want to show you is, if you look at the bottom, I need a pointer. Got my laser pointer. But if you see the word Guinea, y'all see that? Now, they divided this up through the Dutch, the British, and Denmark. Denmark, Holland, and England divided it up, and you see the different colors showing the borders of their lands. Now, where you see Guinea at, you see, I'll get up there and show you. Now, of course, this is modern day Nigeria. It'd be like Cameroon, Nigeria, Benin, all that, Ghana, all right here, Sierra Leone over here. Now, this is called the Grain Coast, right? Now, it's called the Grain Coast. I wonder why they called it the Grain Coast. Because that's where they took grain from. The Gold Coast, because that's where they took the gold from. The Slave Coast, because that's where they took the slaves from. Let it sink in. Let it sink in. I got what I'm trying to say. So we got the Grain Coast, the Gold Coast, Slave Coast. And this is, and right here, now I was here about 5 or 6 times. Well, I didn't even know I was right there where we originated, where we didn't originate, but where we were at in Africa. And just around Lagos. Lagos, Nigeria is about right here. Now, but it was called Negro land, and this is Guinea. But Guinea was not here at first. The whole thing, Western Africa, was called Negro land. So that's why they knew when he came here, they called you Negro, because that's where you came from. Now, the problem is, I know y'all can't see this. This is pretty far back. But right here in the Slave Coast, this map erased something that was on the original map of 1747. It was very important because this is, you realize, these are England, Holland, and Denmark. These are colonial powers. They had to erase something here so that you would never ever know where you came from. But on the 1747 map, put it back up there, Tim. Mess with the people eye. Look, on the 1747 map, it's something right there. You got what I'm saying? Now, because I told you I'm a teacher, because see, Negroes don't get it. I heard preach on, man, we can't be no people, man, God wouldn't do. What's wrong with it? What's wrong? I'm sure to show you. Now, 1747 originally has the Kingdom of Judah. The colonizer so purposely removed it so Judah's history would be erased completely, which means they wiped us off the map. So they knew these are some of the earliest navigational maps. So they knew, in order to keep you from knowing your history, if y'all ever get out of slavery and start reading, ain't gonna be nothing for y'all to read, because we've already changed it all. Wiped you off the map. Put them up, Tim. Now this is another map now. This is the same map, but it's just give you more understanding. You see Negro land, okay, now below, now I'm gonna go deep into this on a different study and show you where all the tribes are and everything, and show you that a lot of the Bible wasn't written in the Middle East. They lied about that. Remember they said the Tower of Babel was in Shinar, and Shinar is in Iraq, remember? Did y'all not know that? They said the plains of Shinar, right? But there's no Shinar in Iraq. There's no, the Bible is not in, there's no Shinar there. Guess where it is at? It's in Africa. The majority of the Bible was written there. I can't let you know that we're colonial powers. We are colonizing the world, and we can't let black people think that we got. Okay. So y'all see this now. I pointed out with the red line, Slave Coast, because I want y'all to see that. Now, you can't see it, but it's right here. Now, on this map, the original map, right here is the Slave Coast, right? Gold Coast, Grain Coast, right here, Slave Coast. You see that area? This is a small area right there. Whole Africa ain't a slave coast. Now, I'm going to blow it up and show you. Put me up there, Tim. Now, this right here, KM stands for Kingdom of Judah. This is what they took off the map. Or Weta, which is what they called us. They was changing the translations. Because you know they changed it into Dutch, but then down here it says Judah again. So right here in this little area, the slave coast is where the slaves came from. But who was they taking? Judah. Y'all want it. Y'all don't want it. Y'all don't want it. Put it back up here. I want to see him again. Weta. And I'm going to show you that modern, I'm going to show you where the modern is now. You'll see it. But I want y'all to know, now this is the reason why I'm trying to show y'all the Bible's accurate. Come on, Tim. That after the persecution and war of 70 AD in Jerusalem, the Hebrews fled into Africa. Not like they didn't know where they was running at. They've been in Africa before, many times. You did know that Christ went in Africa. They know about Africa. Most of the Bible was written in Africa. That's the reason. Why do you think they cut the Middle East off and said the Middle East is not a part of Africa when it's connected by a continent? It's connected. Because they were trying to change the geography so you won't know who's who. The whole Bible is about who is who. It's a people that's imposter. I told you, they jacked us. I try to tell y'all that. It's an imposter people that the Bible says are false, that are bringing a false Messiah to a false people that will rule the world. But then there's a real people that don't know who they are, that are truly lost. Even in the New Testament, Paul says Israel is blind. She don't know who she is. That's why she does the stupid stuff she do. That's why we walk with our pants sagging and we adopt every silly culture. We smoke anything they make, any drug, we take it. We don't know, because we don't know that ain't our customs. That's not our history. That's not who we are. Let me back up here one more time. Let me get it. Now, so the blue line is the route that they took. Where are they going at? To the Ivory. They get to the coast to take your butt to that point of no return. Now, all the other people around us, these are Africans. Who you think helped them take you out of there? That's why going to Africa ain't going to help you. Because I've been in Africa and they've told me, I've heard Africans say, we sold y'all. I heard them. I heard them say, we sold y'all to the Ravens. Ravens sold y'all to the Europeans. That meant they knew. Listen, this is what I'm trying to show you. For them to take that off the map, they knew exactly who they were taking. The map proved that European colonizers knew exactly who they were taking from Africa, Judah, and Hebrews. They knew that. That's why when you first came here, they was calling you Hebos. It's a derivative of Negro and Hebrew. They knew who you was. They took a people. You got what I'm saying? Well, let's go. Now this is modern day Nigeria. Y'all see Lagos? I don't know if y'all can see that. That's where I was in, like, you see Owita? That's the same place that we was, Slave Coast, right there. Judah. They named the town after it. And this is where and this is why if you go over now, it's one of the worst places in Africa right there, Lagos. It's really, really, really bad. But when I went to Nigeria, I was like, man, these are the only people, I've been all over Africa, they the only ones look like us. We got the same mannerisms, I'm telling you, they the only people. And I kept wondering why do you feel a kinship with them, but no, I didn't feel it with Uganda, I didn't feel it with South Africans or Cameroons or none of the other people, but them, I felt it with. Congolese, but those, because they all of they people, and this is where these Lemba tribes and stuff are.
Praise Yahuwah.
When Israel was a nation, they agreed to a set of covenant laws at Mount Sinai as part of a special contract with Yah. It meant that they were to be his people, and he would in turn be their Elohim. Now, as with all contracts, which usually involve at least two parties, in this case Yah and Israel, both parties were bound by certain agreements which were spelled out in the contract or covenant. The ancient people of Israel were told that if they obeyed the laws of the covenant, they would have Yah's protection and be showered with many blessings. If they disobeyed, they would receive punishment and suffer many curses. Sadly, our ancestors chose the latter, and following that fateful decision, the nation of Israel was thereafter thrust into a series of events that eventually resulted in a time of trouble and punishment whose ill effects are still felt to this very day.
Sold it to you $890. That's a good buy. $890. All right.
Before long, ancient Israel experienced a civil war and eventually split into two kingdoms, with the tribe of Judah leading a 2-tribe kingdom to the south and 10 tribes forming a kingdom to the north. After a period of self-rule, the independence of the northern kingdom was threatened by the Assyrians. We get that account in the book of 2 Kings.
Hoshea, son of Elah, began to rule over Israel in the 12th year of King Ahaz's reign in Judah. He reigned in Samaria 9 years. He did what was evil in Yah's sight, but not to the same extent as the kings of Israel who ruled before him. King Shalmaneser of Assyria attacked King Hoshea, so Hoshea was forced to pay heavy tribute to Assyria. But Hoshea stopped paying the annual tribute and conspired against the king of Assyria by asking King So of Egypt to help him shake free of Assyria's power. When the king of Assyria discovered his treachery, he seized Hoshea and put him in prison. Then the king of Assyria invaded the entire land, and for 3 years he besieged the city of Samaria. Finally, in the 9th year of King Hoshea's reign, Samaria fell, and the people of Israel were exiled to Assyria. They were settled in colonies in Halah, along the banks of the Habor River in Gozan, and in the cities of the Medes. This disaster came upon the people of Israel because they worshipped other deities. They sinned against Yah their Elohim, who had brought them safely out of Egypt and had rescued them from the power of Pharaoh, the king of Egypt. They had followed the practices of the pagan nations Yah had driven from the land ahead of them, as well as the practices the kings of Israel had introduced.
This gives us a good picture of why the northern kingdom was punished by being exiled to Assyria. But later, Judah, which was the only kingdom left, also ended up doing that which was not right in the sight of Yah. 2 Kings chapter 24 informs us that the last independent king of Judah, Jehoiakim, reigned for 8 years, practicing evil before Yah unleashed the forces of Babylon on the kingdom of Judah, which ended in that nation being led away captive as well. 70 long years of captivity was experienced in Babylon, and the ancient Israelites witnessed the fall of that empire and the rise of the next. After the 70 years had expired, the new Persian king, Cyrus the Great, allowed the people of Judah to return to their homeland and rebuild. This event was recorded in the scriptures.
In the first year of King Cyrus of Persia, Yah fulfilled the prophecy he had given through Jeremiah. He stirred the heart of Cyrus to put his proclamation in writing and to send it throughout his kingdom. This is what King Cyrus of Persia says. Yah, the Elohim of heaven, has given me all the kingdoms of the earth. He has appointed me to build him a temple at Jerusalem, which is in Judah. Any of you who are his people may go to Jerusalem in Judah to rebuild this temple of Yah, the Elohim of Israel, who lives in Jerusalem. And may your Elohim be with you. Wherever this Hebrew remnant is found, let their neighbors contribute toward their expenses by giving them silver and gold, supplies for the journey, and livestock, as well as a voluntary offering for the temple of Elohim in Jerusalem.
That second temple was indeed rebuilt, and it existed until the time of Yeshua, who prophesied its ultimate destruction. Sadly, many of the people of Judah rejected Yeshua, as they failed to understand the many prophecies and types that pointed to him, such as those found in Exodus 12 verse 5, Zechariah 13 verse 6, Genesis 49 verse 10, Isaiah 7 verse 14, Micah 5 verse 2, and so many others. Yeshua highlighted their rejection of him in several parables. A notable one is the parable of the evil farmers, which can be found in Matthew 21 verses 33 to 46, and in it Yeshua reveals what the rejection of the nation he was sent to would result in. Following the fulfillment of the parable of the evil farmers, wherein they murdered the son of the vineyard owner, that being Yeshua, and after the rejection of his emissaries, the fate of Judah and Jerusalem was pretty much sealed. Yeshua prophesied the destruction of Jerusalem and pointed to the future of the people of Judah, which was right in line with the curses of Deuteronomy 28.
And when you see Jerusalem surrounded by armies, then you will know that the time of its destruction has arrived. Then those in Judea must flee to the hills. Those in Jerusalem must get out, and those out in the country should not return to the city. For those will be days of Elohim's vengeance, and the prophetic words of the scriptures will be fulfilled. How terrible it will be for pregnant women and for nursing mothers in those days. For there will be disaster in the land and great anger against this people. They will be killed by the sword or sent away as captives to all the nations of the world. And Jerusalem will be trampled down by the Gentiles until the period of the Gentiles comes to an end.
This particular prophecy, as you can see, stretched throughout time, with Jerusalem being controlled by the Romans, who were the first to march on her following Yeshua's prediction. Roman rule lasted for hundreds of years after the initial siege. Then the Romans eventually lost hold of Jerusalem to the Muslims. And thereafter various caliphates controlled Jerusalem until the time of the Crusades. During this long period, popes allied with European kings to fight against Muslims. Following the Crusades, control of Jerusalem went from Mongol warriors to Egyptian Mamelukes to the Ottoman Empire, who surrendered Jerusalem to the British on December 9th, 1917. That event led to the modern-day circumstance, which allowed for the establishment of an Israeli state, which is currently occupied by Gentile posers pretending to be the people of Israel, as stated in Revelation chapter 2 verse 9 and chapter 3 verse 9. As prophesied by Yeshua, Jerusalem would be trampled down by the Gentiles until the period of the Gentiles comes to an end. That means that Gentiles would be in Jerusalem, trampling it down till the very last day when Yeshua comes. In other words, the people in that land calling themselves Israel are really Gentiles. But let one of them tell you himself. In his book, The 13th Tribe, Arthur Kessler, himself a so-called Jew, writes in the very first chapter about the time when Charlemagne was crowned Emperor of the West. The eastern confines of Europe between the Caucasus and the Volga were ruled by a Jewish state known as the Khazar Empire. At the peak of its power, from the 7th to the 10th centuries AD, it played a significant part in shaping the destinies of medieval and consequently of modern Europe. The country of the Khazars, a people of Turkish stock, occupied a strategic key position at the vital gateway between the Black Sea and the Caspian, where the great eastern powers of the period confronted each other. It acted as a buffer protecting Byzantium against invasions by the lusty barbarian tribesmen of the northern steppes. But equally, or even more important both from the point of view of Byzantine diplomacy and of European history, is the fact that the Khazar armies effectively blocked the Arab avalanche in its most devastating early stages, and thus prevented the Muslim conquest of Eastern Europe. It is perhaps not surprising, given these circumstances, that in 732, after a resounding Khazar victory over the Arabs, the future Emperor Constantine V married a Khazar princess. In due time, their son became the Emperor Leo IV, known as Leo the Khazar. Ironically, the last battle in the war, AD 737, ended in a Khazar defeat. But by that time, the impetus of the Muslim Holy War was spent. The Caliphate was rocked by internal dissensions, and the Arab invaders retraced their steps across the Caucasus without having gained a permanent foothold in the north, whereas the Khazars became more powerful than they had previously been. A few years later, probably AD 740, the king, his court, and the military ruling class embraced the Jewish faith, and Judaism became the state religion of the Khazars. No doubt their contemporaries were as astonished by this decision as modern scholars were when they came across the evidence in the Arab, Byzantine, Russian, and Hebrew sources. What is in dispute is the fate of the Jewish Khazars after the destruction of their empire in the 12th or 13th century. On this problem, sources are scant, but various late medieval Khazar settlements are mentioned in the Crimea, in the Ukraine, in Hungary, Poland, and Lithuania. The general picture that emerges from these fragmentary pieces of information is that of a migration of Khazar tribes and communities into those regions of Eastern Europe, mainly Russia and Poland, where, at the dawn of the modern age, the greatest concentrations of Jews were found. This has led several historians to conjecture that a substantial part, and perhaps the majority of Eastern Jews, and hence of world Jewry, might be of Khazar and not of Semitic origin. The large majority of surviving Jews in the world is of Eastern European, and thus perhaps mainly of Khazar, origin. If so, this would mean that their ancestors came not from the Jordan, but from the Volga, not from Canaan, but from the Caucasus, once believed to be the cradle of the Aryan race, and that genetically they are more closely related to the Hun, Uyghur, and Magyar tribes than to the seed of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob.
Tell me, what did you mean in the title of your book that the Jewish people had been invented?
It isn't a provocation. I meant it. I think that the Jewish people was invented, like the French people, like the Italian people. You see, to build nations in the modern times, historians started to build to the past peoples. Between these peoples, I think that in the second half of the 19th century, the Jewish people was invented.
Shlomo Sand, an Israeli emeritus professor of history at Tel Aviv University, wrote a book called The Invention of the Jewish People, in which he agrees with a lot of what Arthur Koestler brought forth concerning the Khazarian origins of the so-called Jews. Shlomo Sand, who is himself a so-called Jew, points out that the ancestry of most contemporary Jews stems mainly from outside the land of Israel, and they are descended from converts, and that mass conversions to Judaism occurred among the Khazars in the Caucasus, Berber tribes in North Africa, and in the Himyarite kingdom of the Arabian Peninsula. Yeshua said that a certain people would say that they are Jews but are not, and those people are the Khazars and their descendants who are among us today. And the fact that many sources can be found among these people which proclaim their true origins is astounding. On page 226 of his book, Sand writes, another early source attesting to the collective conversion of the Khazars is a Karaite one. In about 973 CE, one Yaakov Kerkasani, a scholarly traveler who was quite familiar with the regions around Khazaria, wrote a commentary in Aramaic on the verse, Elohim shall enlarge Japheth, Genesis 9:27. This is what the words mean. He will dwell in the tents of Shem, which grant him a favor and advantage. And some commentators think that this refers to the Khazars, who became Jews. What is interesting about the quote he cites and agrees with is the fact that they know and believe the prophecy concerning a people who would pretend to be of the tribe of Judah but are truly Gentiles. And they base this on Genesis 9 verse 27, which coincides with Revelation 2 verse 9 and 3 verse 9. What's more, most of the world is buying into this deception, and for the present-day Khazarians, that's probably reason to celebrate. But getting back to Arthur Koestler on this subject, he writes, "The Jews of our times fall into two main divisions, Sephardim and Ashkenazim. The Sephardim are descendants of the Jews who since antiquity had lived in Spain until they were expelled at the end of the 15th century and settled in the countries bordering on the Mediterranean, the Balkans, and to a lesser extent in Western Europe. In the 1960s, the number of Sephardim was estimated at 500,000. The Ashkenazim, at the same period, numbered about 11 million. Thus, in common parlance, Jew is practically synonymous with Ashkenazi Jew. It should be mentioned that the Ashkenaz of the Bible refers to a people living somewhere in the vicinity of Mount Ararat in Armenia. The name occurs in Genesis 10 verse 3 and 1 Chronicles 1 verse 6 as one of the sons of Gomer, who was a son of Japheth. Ashkenaz is also a brother of Togarmah and a nephew of Magog, whom the Khazars, according to King Joseph, claimed as their ancestor. But worse was to come, for Ashkenaz is also named in Jeremiah 51 verse 27, where the prophet calls his people and their allies to rise and destroy Babylon.
Call thee upon the kingdoms of Ararat, Mini, and Ashkenaz.
This passage was interpreted by the famous Saadia Gaon, spiritual leader of Oriental Jewry in the 10th century, as a prophecy relating to his own times. Babylon symbolized the Caliphate of Baghdad, and the Ashkenaz who were to attack it were either the Khazars themselves or some allied tribe. So, as we have seen from the words of Arthur Koestler, historically, the Khazars and their descendants do not identify with Shem. But rather, they identify with Japheth. And that is proved out in their own writings. This is a major fulfillment of scripture. All that being said, what happened to the real people of Judah in 70 AD, following the siege and destruction of Jerusalem? The ones who weren't captured by the Romans and killed or enslaved escaped. But where did they go? First, you have to understand that whenever trouble arose, such as severe famine in the land, our forefathers and mothers were known to migrate in order to avoid it. There are three famous accounts of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob heading south when famine struck at different periods in each of their lifetimes. Abraham and Jacob went all the way south to Egypt, but Isaac went as far as Gerar. And let's not forget Joseph and Mary, who also fled south to Egypt with Yeshua to escape trouble. These acts are all somewhat prophetic, as they are a major clue as to what happened to the people of Judah following the destruction of Jerusalem. In his book, From Babylon to Timbuktu, author and historian Rudolph R. Windsor, a true Hebrew, writes, "In the year 65 BC, the Roman armies under General Pompey captured Jerusalem. In 70 AD, General Vespasian and his son, Titus, put an end to the Jewish state with great slaughter. During the period of the military governors of Palestine, many outrages and atrocities were committed against the residue of the people. During the period from Pompey to Julius, it has been estimated that over 1 million Jews fled into Africa, fleeing from Roman persecution and slavery. The slave markets were full of black Jewish slaves. After the fall of the Carthaginian metropolis in North Africa, Roman power became dominant in the Barbary states. The pagans and the Romans attacked the Jews indiscriminately, both the Jewish soldiers and the uninvolved peaceful population. As a result of this merciless attack, many Jews fled to those parts of northwest Africa known as Tunisia, Algeria, Morocco, and Mauritania. Many other Jews fled to the areas where Rome did not have any jurisdiction. This was to the region of the south, the Sahara Desert, and the Sudan. Windsor also tells us on page 86 and 87 that more descendants of Judah fled to the west coast of Africa in the 7th century after the Visigoths assumed power and began to suppress Hebrew customs with forced baptisms to Christianity. Windsor cites many credible sources to make his points, Among them is Joseph J. Williams, a 20th century historian who, in his 1930 book Hebrewisms of West Africa, wrote, "Whatever may be thought of the more or less mythological traditions connected with the earliest Jews in North Africa, it is now practically an established fact that a Jewish nation, Jewish at least in faith and perhaps too in origin, long held sway south of the Sahara." Now, while Joseph Williams, who is Caucasian and Jesuit, does provide meaningful and factual info that pertains to the descendants of the ancient Hebrew Israelites, he does so with a degree of reluctance, and the book is written through the lens of what I would call a racist and white supremacist viewpoint. Because despite all the evidence of the true descendants of Judah and Israel as a whole being black, Williams and his sources try to brush that aside and conclude that white Jews, who they blindly claim are the originals, must have somehow lost their color by interbreeding with blacks who thereafter assimilated their culture, for which there is absolutely no evidence. That said, Hebrewisms of West Africa is full of valuable information as regards the wanderings of the Hebrews following the flight from Judea, and it also gives great insight into the further scattering of our ancestors, as certain customs practiced in West Africa by our Hebrew ancestors found their way to islands like Jamaica, Haiti, the Virgin Islands, and many other places following the slave trade. So, having fled their homeland as prophesied, there our ancestors were, charting new territory in Africa and trying to carry on their Hebrew traditions in a new land, but not as savages or uncivilized barbarians. In fact, Rudolf Windsor tells us in his book, "The black Jews had an advantage over the African tribes. They carried their culture, history, laws, and written records with them. This assured them a constant precedent for the development of a higher social organization. Because of the stability of the black Jewish culture, the Jews were not absorbed into the autochthonous or native population. In fact, the Jews absorbed some of the native tribes. The Jews made use of every opportunity. They were an industrious and skillful people. In the Jewish Ghanaian states were found kings, princes, governors, generals, secretaries, treasurers, revenue agents, judges, architects, engineers, doctors, jewelers, sculptors, masons, carpenters, painters of art, goldsmiths, leatherworkers, potters, armorers, saddlers, blacksmiths, agriculturists, etc. The survivors of the Roman siege of Jerusalem were able to flee that terror and carry on in a new land. But the relative peace our ancestors were afforded by escaping to Africa was broken by the Arab slave trade, which affected not only Hebrews, but men, women, and children from many other peoples that were usually of the lowest classes. The Eastern Arab slave trade, in particular, involved women and young girls, and a strict ratio of 2 women for each man was maintained. The Arab slave trade, as horrible as it was, eventually gave way to something much worse with the arrival of the Portuguese. Portugal broke from Arab rule somewhere between the 12th and 13th centuries and slowly rose to power. Because of this small European country, slavery would soon go from including people of lower classes from different ethnicities to being forced mainly on so-called blacks from the tribe of Judah. In the early 15th century, Portuguese shipbuilding in Lisbon and Porto adapted to the times, and the result was the caravel, a light and fast aerodynamic vessel that allowed Portuguese mariners to travel south along Africa's Atlantic coast in order to reach the gold-producing regions of sub-Saharan West Africa. After establishing several trading posts and colonies in the region, other markets began to open up, such as the lucrative commerce in India, and overseas expansion resulted from Portugal's many trade networks. The Portuguese became heavily active in slave trading in Africa around 1445, after they discovered the Cape Verde Islands and settled there. Slavery was used to fuel their expanding empire, and slave trafficking became integral to their enterprise. When it became apparent that slavery was big business, a law had to be created to protect it. Thus, the sitting Pope, Pope Nicholas V, issued a papal bull, the strongest command of a pope, titled Romanos Pontifex, Latin for the Roman Pontiff. He issued the bull to King Alfonso V of Portugal on January 8, 1455, and it allowed the king to, and I quote, invade, search out, capture, vanquish, and subdue all Saracens and pagans whatsoever, and other enemies of Christ wheresoever placed, and the kingdoms, dukedoms, principalities, dominions, possessions, and all movable and immovable goods whatsoever held and possessed by them, and to reduce their persons to perpetual slavery. This was basically a license and go-ahead for King Alfonso, who alone was personally named in the papal bull, to send vessels to search out, capture, vanquish, subdue, and enslave Hebrews, particularly the people of Judah, whose existence, kingdom, and territory they were well aware of. The people of Judah were their primary concern, in fact, and they are the so-called Negroes who were rounded up and scattered throughout the four corners of the earth, just as Yeshua said they would be, back in Luke 21, verse 24.
They will be killed by the sword or sent away as captives to all the nations of the world.
And this also coincides with the curse of Deuteronomy 28, verse 64.
For Yah will scatter you among all the nations, from one end of the earth to the other.
When I say they were aware of who Judah was, I'm not conjecturing. Proof is in the record. If you do a Google search and type in a new and accurate map of Negro land, a list of results will pop up. As of the date of this recording, Swain.com still works. Click on it and a page will open up showing a 1747 map of West Africa by 18th century English map engraver Emmanuel Bowen. And then click on the image of the map itself. Move your mouse pointer to the area that is now present-day Ghana and click on it to enlarge the map. Click it again and you will clearly see that what is now called Ghana was once the slave coast, which the map maker labeled the Kingdom of Judah, dropping the H at the end. This is where many of the people of Judah were shipped from, like sardines in a can. Yet today, the elites and their paid professors would have you believe that we are Africans or Hamites, when in truth we are Shemites. They themselves know this to be a fact. In Zondervan's Compact Bible Dictionary, for instance, the definition for Ham reads as follows. Ham, the youngest son of Noah, born probably 96 years before the flood, and one of 8 persons to live through the flood. He became the progenitor of the dark races, not the Negroes, but the Egyptians, Ethiopians, Libyans, and Canaanites. They say not the Negroes because Shem is the progenitor or father of the Negroes. Though both lines are comprised of so-called blacks, Africans and so-called African Americans are not the same. We are Hebrews and they are Hamites. But there are still many Hebrews in Africa, however. But getting back to our history, despite the papal bull pertaining solely to the King of Portugal, that didn't stop other empires and nations from getting in on the action. Over the centuries, Spain, Britain, France, the Dutch, Canada, the United States, and many African countries participated in the transatlantic slave trade, and this fulfills certain prophecies, such as Psalm 83, which I urge you to read with your eyes open, and Joel 3 verse 6.
You have sold the people of Judah and Jerusalem to the Greeks, so they could take them far from their homeland.
The sad fact is, Psalm 83 is still in full effect, as our collective enemies are still conspiring to keep us in the dark as concern our true identity, and they continue to miseducate us. They really mean to wipe out the memory of the people of Israel from the face of the earth. But Yah is not going to let that happen. And this documentary is merely one step toward that effort. The present situation we are in is solely due to our forefathers failing to keep the covenant law of Yah, and it falls to us in this generation to right that wrong. And Yah said that this would happen in our day.
But I will spare some, for some of you will escape the sword when you are scattered among the lands and nations. Then in the nations where you have been carried captive, those who escape will remember me, how I have been grieved by their adulterous hearts, which have turned away from me, and by their eyes, which have lusted after their idols. They will loathe themselves for the evil they have done and for all their detestable practices, and they will know that I am Yah. I did not threaten in vain to bring this calamity on them.
You see, we, The people of Israel are not born deserving of that name. We are born as Jacobs or supplanters and schemers, but to truly earn the right to be called Israel, we, like our father Jacob, will have to be faithful and wrestle with Yah until we are overcomers. Those of us who do this will be the ones who will truly be called Israel and form the remnant of the kingdom. Having said that, please don't let this be the end of your search for truth on this subject. Continue to dig for it and pray that Yah gives you discernment, since a great deal of deception is out there regarding this topic, and spread the word to your friends and family, and he or she that has ears to hear and eyes to see among them will get it. I hope that this brief history has enlightened you and brought a degree of understanding as concerns our past, which goes well beyond Africa. The so-called Negroes, blacks, and African Americans are actually the descendants of the people of Judah, and that is something they don't want us to know.